Hi, we are Bec and Vern from Rekindling Relationships.
Welcome to our podcast designed to help couples and parents create a more loving, healthy and fun relationship together.
Our aim is to support couples to better communicate as well as help them navigate the tricky aspects of relating.
As well as creating fun dates and creative workshops, we mentor couples and individuals.
Hope you enjoy our podcast and it helps your relationship to thrive.
Hey everyone.
Hey everyone.
So today we're going to talk about couples counselling because it's one of the things we do. One of the many things we do. So let's talk about counselling because I guess some people have been, some people have not. Most people aren't sure about what it entails. I think that as I've been to relationship counselling before, it can be daunting. I feel, as a man, going and then talking about what's going on in the relationship and what's not working can feel a little bit, like you get a bit defensive because you think you're going to be blamed for everything. So let's talk about how couples counselling can help couples. Here's a Google question for you, Bec. Can couples counselling fix a relationship?
Well, that's a tricky one. It depends on what's happened in the relationship. I think it can and it might not. And either way...
She's really sitting on the fence.
I am, because it might not... It might need ending.
True. So, but that would fix the relationship, wouldn't it?
It would
By ending it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sometimes you actually need to end relationships. Sometimes they run their course.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the time too, it's that we're mediators, I find, just helping them have really tricky conversations that they're struggling to have or bring up because it can be really uncomfortable. So we kind of ask those questions so that they can have those really uncomfortable conversations that they're struggling to have. And where that leads from those answers is ultimately up to how much work they put in afterwards. So, we might give them some tools and some ideas and help them navigate whether to go forward or it might be that they've come in. Actually, sometimes this happens too. It might be that they've come in because one of them's like, I'm actually wanting out of this, but I don't know how to tell that, like how to say that to that person. So, sometimes that's been the case as well.
So you're saying that couples counselling doesn't fix a relationship. Couples fix relationships depending on whether they want to do the work.
Yeah, we're merely there just to mediate a conversation and help them navigate going forward, whether that means ending it or making it better.
Yep. And I think when we have people in there, sometimes they can have those difficult conversations that you speak of without arguing because the conversations they try and have tend to go around in circles and then they get into an argument and then it gets heated. But when you have other people in the room, it's really hard to get into an argument because we can stop that. We also do it a little bit differently because when people come to us, it's not one person they're seeing, it's two of us, it's a couple talking with a couple. So it allows us to maybe understand where each person's perspective is coming from, where I might not understand the woman's perspective because I'm not a woman. And I can help you understand the men's perspective better, or I can speak to what the man might be feeling in that moment because I get where they're coming from.
Yeah, it definitely helps having both perspectives. I also think that the more honest they are, and sometimes it's really hard to be honest with your partner as to where you're at and how you feel. And so we open up in a safe container that space for them to be really honest. And you can only really move forward if you're really authentically honest.
So true. So maybe people who are going to counselling or feel that they need to, probably need to understand that it's about them being able to be as honest as possible in that space.
Yeah, otherwise you waste your money too, don't you really?
Well, you're wasting your time, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're not really going to move forward, are you?
No, you may as well be honest. That's what you're there for. Okay, I've got a question for you.
Is this another Google question?
It is, yes. How soon is too soon for couples therapy?
How soon is too soon? Look, I would say that before people get married, they should go to counselling, definitely, premarital counselling. How soon is too soon? See, the difficulty is that people get together and the first couple of years is really that honeymoon stage where the other person can do no wrong. And if there's something that you don't really, might irritate you a little bit, you just sort of let it go, don't you?
I mean, obviously, you still feel like that about me.
Oh, yeah, yes. There's nothing you do that irritates me. Yeah, like the perfect woman. It's amazing.
You put it out there for the world to hear.
Just so everybody knows, my wife is perfect. She doesn't need therapy. Look, I think that you should see a therapist before the cracks appear. I think that a lot of people who come and see us have waited till the very last minute and then are surprised when it's really difficult for them to move forward.
I think they've waited until, the wheels have fallen off and then gone, hey, can you help us fix this?
We can't drive this car.
There were so many cracks happening beforehand.
Yeah.
And, I think...
They've been driving around with no oil in the engine for such a long time.
It's about to blow.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, we all come in with some form of baggage from either... passed on patterns that we've observed through our parents' relationship or, past relationships that we bring into this new relationship. So we all come in with some baggage that we need to shed.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And maybe that's the thing. It's not just about the couple coming in doing the counselling. It's like each person who is in that couple has to do their work as well. And if you do the work on yourself, then when you're together, you can help each other as well. Like if you've got so much going on, if you've both got so much going on, then it's really hard to have a relationship because you're just probably triggering each other every time you do something. So you might have brought a person into your life who is there to heal an old wound of yours from your growing up and your family and your relationship with your mother or your father, and then you bring this person in and you're just repeating the same stuff and they're being triggered by it. It's just a mess. But I do think that if you go and see someone, you go and talk about it and you work out what you're doing and you're willing to do the work on yourself and with each other, then you can create a relationship which holds you forever. Like, you grow old with this person knowing that you're safe and there's trust and you have a deep connection and you have amazing intimacy, all those things.
It's probably easier to sort a lot of this stuff out, if possible, before kids come along too.
Definitely. And, even if you've got kids and you've been together for 20 years, then these things could still be coming up. So don't wait. What amazes me is I think about the amount of money people spend on stuff. Like, we spend on a house, or we spend on our cars, or we spend on entertainment, we spend on concert tickets, but we're not willing to spend that money on our relationship. Like go and see someone, have a talk, do the hard work, and it makes our lives easier. We don't even think about it. Spend the money, like really. You'll be much happier in the long run. Spending $500 on concert tickets and a night out in town and dinner doesn't actually fix your relationship. Yeah, it might build a happy memory, but if there's stuff going on, then that's the thing that needs to happen first. You need to work on what's going on between you, what's going on for you, what's going on for them, what's happening together. So one question that gets Googled, is it too late to do couples counselling? When is it too late?
Oh, look, I think it depends on what's gone on. And I think probably when trust has been broken, then it, that's harder to fix, I guess, for want of a better word. I think, though, if you both really are committed to fixing it and put in the effort, then it's never too late. If one of you's checked out, then it's probably too late.
That's something which comes up a bit when we work with people, isn't it? That, one person's checking out. They're like, there's been something going on for so long, and they sort of expect the other person, maybe they've talked with the other person's not listening, or they've just sort of kicked back and gone, well, nothing's going to change, I'm out, and they start to check out of the relationship. And then it's really hard to get them back in, because they're already just like thinking about, that's when I think people maybe have affairs, or they start to drift, or they just go, oh, it's done, I'm done. And I think this happens especially with people who have been in relationships for a really long time and they haven't seen any changes. And I have to say, I feel like it's a lot of the women who check out, because they've sort of been leaving hints with their partners that something has to change, and those things haven't changed. And maybe they need to actually be really clear. I don't think men are very good at hints. I think you need to be really clear. We need to see a counsellor to work this out, because if we don't, I'm leaving.
I think too, like you mentioned, you touched on just there, is that you have to keep up the work and keep putting in effort, not just for a time. So don't, come to counselling and the counsellor or mediator might suggest doing this and that, and you put in some work for a time and then just go back to your old habits. That's never going to work. That we see a bit of too. So, it does take constant work. It's like servicing your car, as you mentioned. You've got to service it regularly. You've got to keep doing that with your relationship. You have to keep putting in effort. Otherwise, it will die. It's like any relationship with a friend. You got to keep calling them up or sending them messages or checking in or going out for coffee. You have to do the same effort. Put in the same effort, if not more, obviously more, with your partner.
Why do people get so complacent in relationships, do you think?
Take it for granted, I think.
You think they just take it for granted and then...
It's always there.
It's always there. Until it's not. And then they're like, hey, what happened to my relationship?
Yeah. We see that quite often with people that identify as male. What would you suggest that they need to do to resurrect or reunite or reconnect or
maybe
rekindle their relationship?
Rekindle.
Their relationship.
Yep. Yeah, look, I agree. We see that a lot where we get couples come in and the men, it's not like they've checked out of the relationship. They're still in the relationship, but they've been taking the relationship for granted for so long, and they haven't been growing emotionally. They've just been doing the sort of same things. It's like they get into the relationship and then they've got that person, and then they don't think they have to do anything more than that. They don't bother dating anymore. Like the energy and the effort that they put in at the beginning just dribbles off. And it dribbles off. That's a terrible word. It just sort of recedes, and then they're not really as active in that relationship anymore. So I've heard of it, and it's called penny dating. So when someone views you as a piggy bank, and so when they first woo you and they first, want a relationship with you, they put in heaps of time and energy, and, it's 100% full effort to get your interest. And then what happens once you're hooked, then this other person starts to decrease the investment, the time and energy they put into you. And then what happens, they get to a point where you're like, oh, hang on, you're not putting much effort in. Then they push it back up again. But over time, they just slowly and steadily just decrease the investment, then decrease the amount of investment and time until they get to the penny stage where they're just putting in a little bit of time and effort, just enough to keep you interested, but not really much. And you're like wondering whether you are, what's going on? Does this person still like me or love me? And it could be that, their focus has changed and they're more focused on their work, but it really shows that they're not prioritizing the relationship anymore.
I feel like that's fairly common.
It's really common. And, there's actually a thing on TikTok which is called penny dating, and it's this manipulative technique where it's people who, they like love bomb you or shower you with gifts to start off with, and they're really working really hard, and then suddenly they sort of back off, or they, don't, all of a sudden they're just not there and then they are there. And it's like this push and pull where you never know where you stand. And that's in a short-term relationship. But in a long-term relationship, I think it's definitely there where the person just stops putting in any interest. They stop dating you. You know, it's a good way to find out, a good way to work out, you know, whether you are being treated like this is to add up the time and hours in a week what you spend with this person. So like add up the time that you're at work, then the time that you're that person or you as well, do it for both of you, focused on hobbies or interests or maybe children, and then how much time you have for yourself. And I think not for yourself, and then how much time you have together as a couple. And that gives you a bit of a ratio about how much effort and energy is being put into the relationship. And if it's less than everything else, then you've got a problem.
I've got another Google question for you.
Oh, please tell me.
Should a relationship be hard work?
Should a relationship be hard work? Wow, is that a question from a man? Because we do find relationships sometimes really, I mean, I do. I think most men do. It's a lot of an emotional challenge, which we probably didn't, when we first start off, we don't think about that. We don't think about the emotional side of it. There's a physical side and there's the, hey, let's date this person. And once this person's interested, oh, they like us and all this sort of stuff. But I think that relationships should be a bit of work. Like you both got to work towards it. Should there be hard work? I think if it's really hard all the time, then maybe we're not really on the same page. It's like if you get up every day and you know, every day you love your work, and then you get to a stage where you're like, well, I love my work sometimes and sometimes I hate it. But when you get to the point where more often than not you get up and you're like, well, I really don't want to go there, it's time to get out. You know what I mean? So if you're in a relationship and more times than not you're going like, this is really hard work, then maybe it's time to go and see some counselling. It's to sit down and go, hang on, this doesn't seem to be the right thing for either of us, because it's hard work. I'm working all the time at this, or we're working all the time at this, or maybe I'm working at this and you're not paying any attention to it. What do you think?
Good answer. No, I agree. I think it should be work. I don't think it should be hard work.
Yeah, because it's like work which you want, isn't it? It's like the work
you got to put in work and effort.
Yep.
But I don't think it should be hard work.
Why do people think it's hard work?
Well, probably like you said, maybe there's baggage that they haven't processed and they've brought it into the relationship. They're triggering each other in some way. Maybe your communication styles are different. Maybe you're not the right person for each other.
Yeah, that's a hard thing, isn't it? When you've got to sort of go, oh, actually, this person isn't for me. Do you think nowadays, like, you know, with this sort of hookup culture, and I'm talking more probably younger people, I think when you get a bit older, you're more likely to sort of stay in something because you feel like you've invested time in it, and money and energy and resources. But maybe in that hookup culture, that younger generation who are back and forth off Tinder and dating, do you think that generation are just unwilling to put in the hard work? Because as soon as things get a little bit challenging, or they're like, this person maybe not for me, they just give up on it rather than do the work. So they just have maybe superficial relationships.
Maybe it's easier to have superficial relationships because, I mean, sometimes you can have people on the back burner that you were chatting to and you're like, I'll try this one, but I've always got those ones in lieu just in case this one doesn't work. Or, you know, when you're chatting on dating sites. And also there's a lot of options. Not saying that's the case for everybody, but it can be easier but harder in some ways. I think too there's a bit of an addiction to that first year or two of it being really exciting, and then that dies off and you want that dopamine hit of having that excitement again, you know, of that new person.
So you mean the dating culture we have right now could really exacerbate that?
Yeah.
So do you think that because they don't then go into those deeper relationships, they don't really get to know each other, they're not really getting to enjoy like what a good relationship feels like?
Yeah, that depth of intimacy, yeah.
So it's all very. So maybe it's just like this real throwaway sort of culture. It's just like, oh, have a person. It's like, like fast food. You sort of enjoy it and then move on to the next bit of food, and you're not really getting. It's not really nutritious for you. It's not really growing you.
I think sometimes too you can fall into the trap of not healing what we need to heal from that last broken relationship and taking the time to really process that. We can just jump straight into another one,
Oh yeah, I've never done that.
Like, me neither. I think we've all done that at some point.
Yeah, we always end up getting back in, and then you, like you said, it's like history repeats, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're starting to do the same thing over again. You're like, hey, this person's blah 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 blah. It's always the other person, isn't it?
Of course.
This is a question sort of come up before, but how do you bring up couples counselling? How do you just say, hey, this is something that we think should happen? It could be that the man goes, oh, we need to do this thing. I recognise that things aren't working for us. Or it could be the woman says that, or, it depends. It depends on what sort of couple you're in. How do you bring it up? How do you bring up, hey, we should go and talk to someone? Or how do you bring up, things don't seem to be working, we should do something about it?
Oh, look, me personally, but I'm fairly direct. I would say I think it would be really good for us to go chat to a mediator or a counsellor and just try and work out some of these things that we're having issues with that keep coming up, that we're struggling to communicate on and keep triggering us. And I think if your person really wants to make it work, they'll do it. They'll do whatever they want, whatever you want to keep the relationship alive. If they love you, they'll do it.
Yeah.
I would just bring it up.
Yeah, see, look, what I would do as a man, I would just try and avoid it. And I would just be like, just push it under the rug, or see if I can just change the conversation, or maybe make it all about them, make it their fault. Obviously, they're the ones who need the counselling. I don't. I'm fine. I'm perfect. I've got nothing to learn about myself.
And obviously, you don't go, hey, you need it. You'll be like, hey, I think this would be really beneficial for us to both do together. So
you don't blame the other person?
No, that seems obvious, but maybe it's not.
What are you talking about?
I mean, you've had this happen in a relationship where they've said, let's go to couples counselling. How did you feel about that?
Oh, look.
How was it brought up?
Look, it was brought up in the sense that I'm making a lot of mistakes and I don't understand relationships really well, and that we should go so that she could hear someone say what she's saying to me, but in another voice. At the end of the day,
So were you uncomfortable about going then?
I was so uncomfortable about going. And then when I went, I didn't feel like my perspective was listened to. I actually felt like I was under the microscope, and this wasn't about fixing the relationship and that we both had something happen. Both were bringing different things in the relationship. It was, I don't work really well in relationships. I didn't understand intimacy, vulnerability, emotional understanding, and I need to fix that. So I walked away from that feeling a little bit like I was a bit useless in that relating space.
And the counselling wasn't with like a man and woman?
It was just with a man, actually.
Oh, a man.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
And he didn't actually make me feel really good about myself. But that could have been me. It could have been me bringing in my own blah, blah into the space and being like, oh, it's going to be all about me. Maybe I didn't hear some of the things. But I think the way I got it happened, I wanted to do it for my partner because my partner was like, this is important, we should do it. But I don't think that how I went through it, I don't think it actually helped me. It just made me feel wrong. But maybe that was me, because I can get defensive when I feel like, I'm not doing things right. And, that's part of our own emotional growth, isn't it? Or my emotional growth is to learn to hear something and be okay with not being perfect and not being right at it, and being able to go, oh, okay, that's something I need to work on. Having said that, I do feel that, yes, definitely you have to go in with an open mind, but I didn't feel that my partner at the time felt like she had to do anything. It was all my fault. It was all my to do with. And now, you know, in hindsight, I can look back at that relationship and be like, I definitely wasn't my best person all the time, but she wasn't either. And she had brought into the relationship a whole lot of old stuff, which she hasn't healed, but was blaming me. And then I was reacting to that. So it was both of us were actually not working really well in that space.
Triggering each other,
which is what happens in couples. I mean, you come from totally different backgrounds, don't you? You come from different experiences and you come into a space and then you've got to try and work it out. And maybe if we'd seen that counsellor earlier, before things got messy, and then if we saw them a few times and I could build up that rapport and be like, okay, yes, I can see where you're trying to work here and what you're trying to do.
Did you see...
Maybe that would have worked out better.
Did you see him on your own before you went in as a couple?
No, it was just the two of us together.
Yep.
But there's so many different types. I do believe that everyone should go and talk to someone, and all couples should actually go and seek some sort of mediator, like you said, or counsellor, or like we mentor couples. And when I say mentor, it's like, you know, I feel like what we're doing is we're trying to give them the best strategies to move forward together to help them. And it seems to work, like, you know, when we talk to people and we get where people are coming from and we can help them, if they're willing to do the work, then things get better. Yeah. It's only when they blame the other person or they refuse to take any responsibility, or they just have already checked out, or it's all too hard, then, nothing comes from it. Yeah. Another interesting chat.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye for now.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Please reach out to us with comments and questions.
And you can find out more about us at rekindlingrelationships.com.
Or find us on YouTube, Instagram and Facebook.